Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, I'm going to get started in a couple of minutes. I just want to give people time to tune in. It's been a while since I've gone live. And you can let me know right away if you experience any problems doing this hangout, if there's a lot of buffering, or if you can't hear me. I would appreciate it if you let me know. So we'll get started in a few minutes. I see that at least one person is tuning in right now. Hopefully, others will join later. I know that it's been a while since I've done a video here on my channel. I encourage you all to hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. But there's some things that I want to talk about tonight, and I hope that you all can join this discussion. Please let me know if you can hear me fine. I would appreciate it. Also, before I get into this content, I just want to remind people that I am running for Baltimore City Council, District 4, and I hope that you all can support my campaign. Even if you don't live in Baltimore, you can support my campaign. You can support it financially. Uh, you can find my website at ansonasaka.com. That's ANSONASAKA. And you can go on that website. You will see a section for you to donate, and you can donate to my campaign. I have about 9,000 subscribers. If each one of my subscribers gave me $10 to this campaign, I will be very competitive in this race. They say that on average, candidates need to raise about $80,000 to be competitive. If each one of you donated $10 to my campaign, that would be more than enough for me to be highly competitive in this race. And for people that don't know, I'm running for Baltimore City Council because I want to make a difference. You all know that I have an undying love for the people. I'm committed to the struggle for social justice. I'm committed to the struggle for Black liberation. And by getting involved in an actual election, I am actually contributing to the struggle for justice and equality for our people. So, what I'm going to do is get into this content, but before I do so, I want to see what you all are saying. Thanks for letting me know that you all can hear me fine. I appreciate that. So people ask, where have I been? Shout out to Bonafide 1970. Shout out to Covina Man. Shout out to Dave Bowman. Shout out to everybody that's tuning in. Much respect to y'all for tuning in and supporting this channel. Uh, in terms of where I've been very busy, so I haven't had the time that I usually dedicate to this channel. I've been working on this campaign. I've been meeting with a lot of people. I've also, I am working on a major project for a library. As you all know, I'm also a visual artist. I'm an all around Renaissance man. I'm doing it all. I have no limitations on what I'm going to do in this life. So, yeah, I'm doing, working on this major project. And I will have more information on that. I'll probably post some links eventually on my on this channel, letting you all know about the status of that project. But it's major. It's a major milestone in my career as a visual artist as well. I'll be letting you all know about that as things go along, as things develop. But tonight, what I want to talk about is this discussion that took place on Revolt TV. And I want to know if you all saw that discussion. When I get a chance, I'll post a link in the description box to the YouTube video so you all can check it out for yourself and judge it for yourself. So somebody wanted to know, am I running as a Democrat or independent? They want to know what I'm running as. I'm running as a Democrat. And, I can explain that briefly. For the longest time, I was an independent. It was only in the last couple of years that I've become a Democrat. And the main reason why I became a Democrat is because I wanted to vote in the primary for Bernie Sanders. See, if progressives aren't involved in the Democratic Party, then the Democratic Party will remain a corporate party that doesn't address the needs of the people. And in a city like Baltimore, for instance, this is a heavily Democratic city. And just from a practical standpoint, it doesn't make much practical sense for someone in this heavily Democratic city to run either as a third party candidate or a Green Party candidate or whatever. It's highly unlikely that you will win an election if you run as a third party candidate here in Baltimore. So I am running as a Democrat. And, I plan to address the issue about, Democrats versus Republicans, which is something that came up during that discussion on Revolt TV. But yes, I am running as a Democrat. Between the two parties, the Democratic Party has more to offer the African American community than the Republicans do. But I can talk about that a little bit more in detail. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to your comments after I just run through these main points that I want to raise about this particular revolt program that took place, where you had T.I., you had Killer Mike, you had Candice Owens, and you had some other people talking about this issue of voting and politics and all that kind of stuff. It was a very interesting discussion that's worthy of the attention that it's receiving here on YouTube. So I want to try to make this not a super long hangout. I want to just hit these points, see what you all are saying, respond to your comments. But one thing that came up during this discussion is a back and forth between the brother T.I. and Candace Owens. Now, T.I. basically called out Candace Owens because she supports Donald Trump. And he basically said, well, what about Trump and this issue of white supremacy? And he also, dealt with this whole slogan of Make America Great Again, because this woman, Candace Owens, said that she would, have the slogan of Make Black America Great Again. And then T.I. really went in on her. He basically was like, well, when has America ever been great? He asked, was it great when black people were hung up in trees? Was it great during the crack epidemic? When was America great? Was it great during the time when women could not vote? So he asked that profound question. And it's really a basic question, but it's deep at the same time as well. And you had Killer Mike try to say that America was great, like immediately following the Civil War. And I don't believe that that's the case. I think that was a weak counter argument that Killer Mike made, because the fact of the matter is this. When it comes to the plight of African American people in this country, when it comes to the plight of our ancestors, our elders, and ourselves, this country was never great. And I know that that's a hard pill for people to swallow, but it's an actual fact. America wasn't great when we were brought over here in chains and shackles, enslaved, where we didn't have any rights. We weren't even recognized as human beings. Animals were treated better than black people. We were robbed of everything, like the brother Khalid Muhammad said. We were robbed of our language, our culture, our religion, and our gods. We were robbed of everything. Robbed of our original languages, man. We don't even speak the language of our ancestors. We were forced to embrace a foreign language, foreign customs, foreign everything, and stripped of our original identity. And not only were we stripped of our cultural identity and reduced to property, these people beat us. These people raped us. These people killed us and castrated us for hundreds of years. And many of our ancestors didn't even make it to this country. Thousands upon thousands, some say even millions of black people died during the Middle Passage. America wasn't great when we first encountered this country, when we were ripped away from our motherland. How can America be great then? And even, after slavery, America wasn't great when it came to our people. After slavery, we went through a second phase of slavery, where they had different laws. You had Jim Crow. You had sharecropping. You had the imprisonment of black people in the criminal industrial complex, where slavery, where they can lock black people up for any old reason, for vagrancy, and then they can turn you into a virtual modern day slave. There's a whole documentary on PBS called Slavery by Another Name. So even after slavery, we were deprived of human dignity and human rights. We were segregated. We were humiliated. We were lynched and raped and all that kind of stuff after slavery. There was a time when a black people could just be lynched and there would be no justice. In fact, they would enjoy the lynching of black people. It was a sporting event for these people. They would gather their friends and their family, just like you gather friends and family to go to a baseball game or a football game or to the movies. They were entertained by the suffering of our people, entertained by seeing black men and women burnt alive, entertained by seeing black people lynched, hanging from trees. How can anybody in their right mind think that that was a time when America was great for black people? All that black people weren't even able to go to a restaurant. They had to. There were signs saying no colors allowed. They had signs saying no colors allowed, no dogs allowed, etc. We had to drink from the colored fountain. We had to sit in the back of the bus. And even when you were in the back of the bus, if all the seats were taken in the front of the bus and a white man got on that bus, he had every right to tell you to get up out your seat, and you would have to stand so that that white man could have a seat. That's the America that our grandparents and parents lived under. And even today, with some of this progress, this great progress that we have, we are still viewed as other. We are still discriminated against. We still face the problem of police brutality in this country, where black people are killed by these police and there is no justice for black people. Just like the brother Freddie Gray, the brother's neck was shattered to pieces. They described his neck as feeling like a bag of rocks. That brother was killed and there was no justice for him. Not one of those cops were convicted. In fact, those cops received awards. They were recognized and celebrated by some right-wing organization. This is how they do black people. Just like that guy that killed Trayvon Martin, that scumbag, George Zimmerman. After he killed Trayvon Martin, he became a celebrity, and people were seeking his autograph. They were seeking his autograph, and he actually sold, if I recall correctly, the gun that he used to kill Trayvon Martin. Sold the gun that he used to kill Trayvon Martin, profiting off of the suffering of that black brother shot through the heart. This is America, man. And we see all these examples of these white terrorists, these white supremacists attacking our people, going into churches, shooting and killing children, shooting and killing unarmed women and, women and men who are just praying, minding their own business, praying and worshiping in their church. And they have some white terrorists come in there and shoot and kill all of them. This is the America that we live under. Again, like the brother T.I said, when was America ever great when it comes to black people, man? Enslaved for hundreds of years, subjected to Jim Crow for decades. And even today, we suffer from police brutality, mass incarceration. The failed war on drugs is nothing but a war on black people. So again, I think that was a profound question. When was America ever great for black people, man? You got these people running around here with these hats on, talking about make America great again. which only means make America white again. A similar slogan was used by the KKK. And you got these ignorant Negroes running around here talking about make America great again. When the hell has America been great for black people? Hundreds of years of enslavement, decades of Jim Crow. And then you got modern day conditions like mass incarceration and police brutality and disproportionate distribution of wealth and resources. When was America great? You got failing schools in black communities, while some of these other schools in these affluent communities, white communities, have all these resources. So when has America ever been great for black people, man? So another point that they talked about was this issue of white supremacy and Donald Trump. So you had this woman, Candace Owens, trying to defend Donald Trump, actually trying to defend his comments that he made about Charlottesville. You all remember what happened in Charlottesville, where you had those white supremacists bearing torches the night before, talking about Jews will not replace us, saying all kinds of racist things, using the N-word and such. And the following day, after they had their night parade or charade, they had an all-out basic riot, a white supremacist riot, where you had one of these white supremacists, one of these damn terrorists, ram his car into a crowd of people, killing one person and injuring a lot of other people. You had white supremacists beating black people to the point where this young brother had his face gashed and blood was pouring down his face. You had one of those white supremacists fire a gun into a crowd. And when Donald Trump was asked about this stuff, when he was asked about the mayhem going on in Charlottesville, this man's first instinct was not to condemn white supremacy. He didn't condemn those white supremacists, contrary to what Candace Owens is saying. He talked about how there were some fine people on both sides. That's what that man said. Some very fine people on both sides. And then you had this Candace Owens trying to say, well, he was right. There were some fine people on both sides. She said that there were people trying to defend people's right to have a statue, to keep those statues up, like, those Confederate soldiers and stuff like that. Celebrating that, viewing that as some kind of great thing. Thank you for the donation. I'll be making an announcement with your name as soon as I get a chance after I make this commentary. But yeah, she was trying to say, well, these are just some Americans defending their First Amendment right, defending, the right to keep certain statues up and stuff like that, and that's not, those aren't white supremacists. That's the cockamamie, half-baked excuse that this Candace Owens chick was trying to run during this interview, during this show on Revolt TV. Hopefully you all can still, I see that if you all can let me know if you can hear me. I see that my image is frozen. Can you all hear me? Somebody can, oh, okay. Somebody said they can hear me perfectly. Maybe it's just on my end that I can't see it. But yeah, so you had this woman trying to make up excuses. You had this woman basically trying to make excuses for Donald Trump. The fact of the matter is, anybody defending those Confederate statues and Confederate symbols and talking about this is our heritage and we're celebrating heritage, to hell with that. You are a racist. That's what you are if you defend that stuff. because those Confederates, they were fighting for the right to enslave black people. They were fighting for the right to be able to sell black people like property, to beat black people, to rape black people, to do all kinds of stuff. Okay, so everybody says my image is frozen, but you can still hear me. So hopefully, this it's always something that goes wrong when I go live, man. I'm sorry about this. So hopefully y'all can bear with me. I'm just gonna have to talk this out. I don't want to have to redo this. I'm just gonna have to keep continuing. Um, but yeah, so you have these people defending these Confederates, and Confederacy is nothing but a defense of slavery. That's what they did. That was the whole reason why they fought uh, in the Civil War. Um, yeah, so let me go on. So that's one thing. She tried to come up with this cockamamie excuse for these white supremacists and for Donald Trump, basically trying to say that Donald Trump was right, to say that there were good people on both sides. How is defending racist symbols good? How is that good for anybody? And then when you look at just what those people were doing, I mean, you look at the attacks that they committed during that Charlottesville thing where you had the guy ram a car into a crowd of people, where you had black people attacked, you had white supremacists firing shots at people. How can anybody in their right mind say that that's those are some fine people? So that's something that just exposes Candace Owens for what she is. And that brings me to another point. That brings me to a whole nother point about Candace Owens, man. You know, People during this debate kept talking about how we need to have unity in the black community, how we need to listen to different viewpoints and all that kind of stuff. And, I understand why they were saying that. And to some extent, like I understand and I agree that we should strive for unity in our community among our people. But some people are not uh, representative of the black community. Some people that look like us are not of us. Some people that had the same skin color as we have, the same pigment, they are not really there to serve the interests of black people. In fact, they are serving the interests of our enemies. In fact, some of these people are all out traitors amongst us. And Candace Owens is such a person. Traitors and sellouts are not our brothers and sisters, and we should not be trying to work with them and trying to, hammer out some differences or giving them a platform. We shouldn't be doing that. And my question is, why in the hell are so many people giving this clown, Candace Owens, a platform to spew her nonsense? This woman is absolutely ridiculous, defending Donald Trump. It makes zero sense that she would defend this guy. This is a man who basically called black women, bitches when he referred to those NFL players that are protesting as sons of bitches. This is a man who has been, had suits filed against him for refusing to rent to African Americans. This is a man who is on record trying to end affirmative action, a program that benefits black people. Instead of using the Justice Department to investigate these police departments that are brutalizing our people, this man decided to weaponize the Justice Department against affirmative action. This man set up a sham voter fraud investigation committee or unit that was designed to really suppress black votes. But yet and still, you had this buffoon, Candace Owens, and that other woman, Katrina, I think her name is Pearson or whatever, defending this guy, man, making excuses for him. And to me, that's just absolutely ridiculous, man. And I think that T.I made a great point about white supremacy and Donald Trump. It is no coincidence that these white supremacists support Donald Trump. They were the ones celebrating his election. They were the ones endorsing him. The KKK endorsed him. Richard Spencer endorsed him. David Duke endorsed him. All these people endorsed Donald Trump. These white supremacists endorsed Donald Trump. That is no coincidence. Donald Trump is speaking their language. He is speaking the language of hate, and he knows exactly what he's doing. This man launched his political career by attacking Barack Obama. You know, adding legitimacy to that whole birtherism, racist movement in this country. But yet and still, you got mammies like Candice Owens and that Katrina woman. Mammies ready to do the work and the bidding of their white daddy, Donald Trump. And it's an absolute disgrace. Now, I want to get to a point that Killer Mike made during this whole thing. Yeah, and I'm going to go to some of the points that people are saying she made that were valid. I'll talk about those in a second. I'm going to look at your comments as well. It's hard for me to see, man, with, you know, the small print on here, but I'm going to try to do the best that I can. Candice Owens is a complete buffoon, man. I mean, how can any rational black person defend Donald Trump? But anyway, let me get into this other thing that Killer Mike raised. Killer Mike brought up this point about people arguing about whose master is better, you know, the Democrats or the Republicans. You know, and he said, well, black people need to have their own political party. And he said that, you know, essentially we shouldn't be arguing over Democrats versus Republicans, and we should be about our agenda. Now, I agree that we should be obviously about promoting our agenda, and that's nothing new. I mean, people say that. You know, you had these little panels, you had these little YouTube personalities as well saying, well, where's the black agenda? Nobody's promoting the black agenda. Apparently, these people just don't know what's going on because people have been promoting a black agenda and pushing a black agenda before politicians for a very long time. It's nothing new. So that's one thing. The other thing is this, like when people say this whole thing about how I'm not going to argue with people over my master versus your master, and, you know, people shouldn't get engaged in those discussions. Basically, these people are trying to make it seem like modern day Republicans and modern day Democrats are equivalent. That somehow they are on a level playing field, and that somehow they are equally destructive to the black community at this present time in history. And I just think that that's completely false. You know, I think that that kind of analysis is not an analysis at all. It's an oversimplification of the situation. Yeah, and I'm sorry for these technical difficulties, but I'm just on a roll, and I'm just going to keep pushing through. You know, for whatever reason, the screen froze up. But the two parties are not one and the same. There's a drastic difference between these two parties. You have one party that is trying to suppress African American voters, trying to do everything that they can to suppress the black vote. You know, passing all kinds of laws like what they did in North Carolina, where they passed a law that courts found to be discriminatory. Courts found that that law was surgically targeting the black community. You know, they set up that law to undermine and to suppress black voters. For instance, they had voter ID requirements, knowing that it would have a disproportionate impact on African Americans. They cut back on early voting, knowing that it would have a disproportionate impact on African Americans. They got rid of same-day voter registration, knowing that it would have a disproportionate impact on African Americans. So, North Carolina is one example, a whole effort to suppress black voters led by Republicans. It's not Democrats suppressing African American votes. That's Republicans doing that. It was right-wing Republicans that tried to, they successfully gutted Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act. That was Republicans that did that. Now it's easier for these states to suppress black votes because of a ruling in the Supreme Court. And who was it that voted in favor of gutting the Voting Rights Act? Justices appointed by Republican presidents. Who's going after affirmative action? Fighting affirmative action, a program that greatly benefits African Americans. Now, I know that people want to talk about how white women and other people benefit from affirmative action, but the fact of the matter is that African Americans, such as myself, substantially benefit from affirmative action. And that's a program under attack by Republicans. When you look at who's trying to cut housing assistance, that's your Republican Party. That's not the Democrats right now. When you look at who's trying to cut food assistance, that's the Republican Party talking about that. That's Donald Trump talking about cutting food assistance, cutting student aid, cutting Head Start, all these programs that benefit black people. So, these two parties are not one and the same. And, obviously there are problems that I have with some Democrats, for instance. As you all know, I opposed Hillary Clinton's run for the White House, because of her support for the crime bill, because of her support for welfare reform and all those things. As they pointed out, like, we need to look at which candidate best serves our interests. That's what we need to do. And I support the idea of black people having an independent party, in the concept of that, using that to leverage our interests and our rights and all that kind of stuff. But we got to look at some things practically. Like I was saying, for instance, here in Baltimore, it is very difficult for a third party candidate to win a city position. It's difficult. It's not impossible. It is possible, but it's an uphill struggle. So, that's one thing that I wanted to say about that. Another thing that I want to address is just the whole nature of this particular discussion. And I will get to your comments at the end. Hopefully this won't be too much longer. But I wanted to talk about this whole format of this Revolt TV show and what I thought about it. I think that show was set up more so for entertainment instead of enlightenment, instead of empowerment, instead of like being actually designed to mobilize and organize people. That program was for entertainment purposes primarily. Because first of all, you got all these entertainers on the panel instead of actual scholars or actual activists. Now you had a couple of activists on there like Tamika, Mallory, and she's somebody that I respect. She's a true activist, a true organizer. But the bulk of the panel were like entertainers and that buffoon Candice Owens. Candice Owens is not somebody that can be taken seriously, man. And it just sickens me that people give that woman such a large platform. You got people inviting her on their programs knowing that she spews nothing but nonsense and lies. And I will get to some of the points that people were saying they agree with her and all that. I'll get to that in a second. But this whole panel was set up for entertainment purposes. They got this far right wing nut, Candace Owens, on the panel, and they got that Katrina, and I think her last name is Pearson or whatever. They had those people on there as polarizing forces. They knew what they were doing. They had them on there to generate some kind of argument for the sake of entertainment. That's all it was about. It was about entertaining people. Why? How else can you explain them having rappers on there talking about some politics? And, that reminds me of what the brother Malcolm X said when he talked about black people relying on entertainers to be their leaders. He talked about how no other group of people operate this way. But when it comes to black people, all of a sudden you got singers and comedians and other types of entertain actors and stuff like that being your leaders and your spokespeople and stuff like that. Nobody else does that stuff, man. They're gonna appoint some rap artist as some leader. I mean, to me, that's ridiculous. Even though, like, I appreciate some of the things that some of them have to say, like some of the positive things that they have to say, as I pointed out with T.I and stuff like that, and even Killer Mike. They say some things that are very important, and their voice is a loud voice. It is a large platform that they have, and it is good that they are using that for positivity. But it's like I have a problem when people want to promote these people as black leaders because they're not leaders; they are entertainers. And it's a shame that you have to have somebody that's a rap artist in order to captivate and get the attention of our people, man. It's just a shame that a rap artist has more influence than a true activist, than somebody that is truly putting in the work for our people. It's just a shame, man. And it just speaks to the level of our political immaturity as a people, man, when we are relying on rap artists to be our leaders. You know, rap artists, for instance, like T.I. I mean, I'm glad that he's turned over a new leaf. I like his music and all that kind of stuff. But this is a man that he got his wealth off of glorifying killing black people, off of selling, glorifying selling drugs and all that kind of stuff. And I'm glad he rose above it and he no longer focuses on that. But we can't forget that. So yeah, I mean that's one thing that I had to mention. Now another thing that I want to talk about, like that a lot of people, I guess they were feeling part of what Candace Owens was saying when she was talking about how the destruction of the black family is a major issue in our community, and without a doubt, that is a major issue in our community. It does affect our community in a great way, and in a great way in a negative sense, without a doubt. But the problem I have with what she was saying is that she basically tried to blame the welfare system for why, the black family has been undermined. She cited how, like, I think it's like 74% of black families are single parent households. And she basically blamed welfare for that. She basically said because of the welfare state, where they basically would deny people benefits if a man was in the home and all that kind of stuff. She basically said that gave an incentive for the single mother syndrome that we see in our community. And this is what I have to say to that. I mean, first of all, I don't think that that's necessarily true because if we're looking at a number of 74% that are raised in single parent households, we know that number doesn't balance out with the percentages of black people that are actually on welfare. We know that a minority of black people are on welfare. The majority of black people are not on welfare. The majority of black people aren't even poor. So to suggest that the whole problem with the destruction of the black family is to blame, that the welfare system is to blame for that, I think that that's an oversimplification of the situation. I don't think that completely explains why we see a deterioration of the traditional nuclear family in the black community. There's a whole host of reasons. And I just think that people are so used to discussing things in sound bites that they try to oversimplify things. But I do agree with her that is a major problem that we need to address as a community, man. The destruction of the black family, the destruction of black relationships is like, why can't we build sustainable marriages in our community? And we see just in American society how divorce is a major problem. And, but we bear the brunt of the problem. So that's something that's profound, that's worthy of a whole discussion in and of itself. You know, why we have so few nuclear families with the man in the household and all that kind of stuff. But you know, that reminds me of another point as well. Like, even though the traditional black, nuclear family has is reduced in number, the fact of the matter is that black men are still involved and engaged in their children's lives, even if they don't live in the household. You know, as was pointed out by the Center for Disease Control, they did a study and they found that black men are more involved with their children than other groups of men. So I think that too often we overhype this whole thing about the absence of the black father. But at the same time, I do believe that it is a real issue that has to be addressed. But I don't think, I think that sometimes people are over exaggerating the problem. Another point that I want to talk about before I close out is this whole anti immigrant type of sentiment that we see among, these Republicans, and then also among some of these fake black militants. And I was just like really disappointed that Killer Mike would cite Yvette Carnell and that guy Antonio Moore, um, and buy into their anti-immigrant nonsense, anti-immigrant mumbo jumbo, um, particularly because their focus is on being hostile to black immigrants. And it's just a shame that you got this guy, Killer Mike, co-signing that stuff, man. It's just an absolute shame, because essentially what you have is a situation where you have black people, so-called pro-black people, parroting white supremacist talking points and not even having sense enough to realize that. And I won't go into more detail because you all know about my position on Yvette Carnell and that whole ADOS ridiculous movement. I've done a lot of videos on that. I won't rehash those points, but instead I'll move on to the next point. The eighth point that I wanted to raise is about like something that one of the young brothers said on the show. Like, one of the young brothers was talking about, well, he was a part of this group that is called Trap the Vote or whatever, basically encouraging young people to vote, which is positive. It's positive to encourage young people to vote and all that kind of stuff. And while he was saying that, he also pointed out how he doesn't have any kind of agenda. And that just made me think about how a lot of these nonpartisan groups, in a lot of ways, they don't have, it's like they're undermining their power because they can't directly speak about candidates and all that kind of stuff. They can't directly speak to the issues. Instead, they got to speak in generic kind of ways to just, be about encouraging people to vote and just educating them about the vote instead of actually mobilizing them effectively to vote for candidates that will promote their interests. So, I think that it is, as somebody else was saying, like I think it was T.I. that talked about how T.I has an agenda. And he said he doesn't apologize for that. His agenda is, basically the liberation and empowerment of black people, black independence, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like we need to be able to speak forcefully about what our agenda is and hold these candidates accountable. We need to be able to be in a position to talk about which candidates we support and why we support them. And that's one of the biggest problems with these nonpartisan groups, even though they do great work. They're like handcuffed. In a lot of ways, they have, it's almost like they have a gag over their mouth. They can't speak forcefully about a lot of the very important issues because they're so concerned about being too partisan and stuff. Yeah, so that was one point that I had to raise. And the last point that I want to stress is this, man. And that's this point that was being raised about how to encourage people to vote. Like you had a lot of the people saying, well, don't talk about, people died for our right to vote. That's not the reason why we actually are voting and stuff like that. We're voting for, the issues that are relevant to us right now and, right here, like education or police brutality. And I think that it's important to emphasize like how voting is relevant to our lives. But as I think it was Killer Mike pointed out, it's important for us to honor our martyrs, though. It's important for us to remember our martyrs. You know, growing up, we were taught about Paul Revere. Growing up, we were taught about the founding fathers. Growing up, we were taught about like people who sacrificed and died for this country. You have holidays like Veterans Day and Memorial Day and all that kind of stuff, so they can remember those who gave their lives for this country. But yet, black people want to be the ones to forget those who gave their lives for black people. And why is that? Why do we want to do that? Why do we want to forget those that sacrificed their freedom so that we could be free? You know, put themselves in a situation where they were locked up. Put themselves in a situation where they were blasted down the street with fire hoses and had dogs put upon them and biting and ripping their flesh. Why do we want to forget the sacrifice of those people, of our ancestors, and our elders and stuff? All the martyrs that died, people like Martin Luther King, people like Medgar Evers, all these civil rights and black activists that lost their lives, all those Panthers gunned down by the federal government. I'm not going to forget them. I'm going to speak about them every time. When I talk about the right to vote, I'm going to talk about the sacrifices of our ancestors, of those great martyrs. Just like America teaches you to honor these white men that died for this country and stuff like that. They teach you to honor the people that stood up to the British. They tell you to honor the people at the Boston Tea Party and all that stuff. But here we are, like some damn fools, talking about we shouldn't be talking about those people that gave their lives so that we can have basic human rights in this country. Yeah, so those are the points that I want to raise, man. I'm sorry, I just get hyped up, man. And I'm sorry about these technical difficulties. Hopefully, y'all can hear me okay. Um, I'm gonna try to read these comments. Yeah, my vision is getting worse and worse. But I want to shout out John Pro. Thanks for tuning in. Shout out everybody that's tuning in. Shout out to Mr. G for your donation. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, eventually I'm gonna get back on my computer soon. I'm gonna have to get some streaming software so I can do this on my computer because it's kind of hard to read these comments. So somebody said that Candace Owens was silenced by the crowd. Um, she tried to provide, she tried to provide some sources and all that kind of stuff. And that reminds me of another point that she raised. But yeah, I mean, the crowd was hostile to her for obvious reasons because she was talking nonsense. But yeah, one of the points that she raised was like to talk about how America was great was to say, well, America was one of the first countries to get rid of slavery or end slavery and all that kind of stuff. When, as people like the Young Turks pointed out, um, that's not the case. I mean, America ended slavery well after some of the other European countries did. So yeah, so I mean, Candace Owens was just spewing nonsense, and that's why people were rightfully outraged at her comments. But I do think that they should have gave her a chance to talk more if they're going to have her on their program. But I don't think they should have even had her on the program. She is not even no. I don't think that she's a real conservative. I don't think. I think that she's somebody that's just trying to make money. She will say and do anything to get paid by her paymasters. Um, all right, so let's see what people are saying. So somebody said, "Here you go with this affirmative action crap again. You're gonna lose a subscriber if you keep this up." I mean, when people say stuff like that, my only response is bye. If you're gonna unsubscribe from my channel because I talk about affirmative action, good riddance. I'm not here to beg for subscribers or anything like that. I'm not here just trying to get some subscribers or trying to say what's popular or what people want to hear. So if you're going to leave because I defend affirmative action, a program that made it possible for me to go to law school, then you can just go to hell. I don't care. I'm not losing sleep over somebody threatening me that they're going to unsubscribe. If you're going to unsubscribe, go. I'm good. There are plenty of subscribers to replace you. Again, shout out to Mr. G for your donation. So Mr. G said they don't care about our black votes. Yeah, and I think you're talking about the Republicans, and that just reminds me of another point that I want to make real quick. Let me just see what. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of stuff to do. I just had to hop on here to talk about this, but that reminds me of another point. Like you hear all these people talk about the black vote doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything. If our vote didn't matter, like these people wouldn't be going out of their way to suppress our vote. They wouldn't have denied us the right to vote for a very long time. They wouldn't have had poll taxes and literacy tests. They wouldn't be trying to suppress the black vote today with voter ID requirements and getting rid of early voting and same day voter registration if our vote didn't matter. All right, so let me see. Just looking through your comments. Yeah, I mean, T.I is conscious now. And I appreciate a lot of the things that he says and does. Not only does he, say the right things, but he's actually trying to invest in the community. And I support that. I salute that. Um, Yeah, entertainers do have popularity, and unfortunately, people are more inclined to listen to what an entertainer has to say than they are to listen to, policymakers, and people are more familiar with who the latest hottest rapper is than they are with the local politics in their community. They can tell you, for instance, about all the football players on all the teams, but they can't tell you who their city councilman is or who their state representative is or even who their U.S. senators are. Yeah, so I don't want to drag this out too long. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Um, I'm not going to have time, unfortunately, to read all your comments, but I truly appreciate you all supporting this channel, watching this live stream, even with this technical difficulty. Hopefully, I don't know if the image came out, but I see that you all were still able to hear what I had to say. The image on my end is frozen and all that kind of stuff. But I want to thank you all for watching. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Also, I encourage you all to support this campaign. You know, it's later for talking about stuff. Later for all of that. Let's be about some stuff. Later for all the talk, let's be about the action. Let's be about putting our money where our mouth is. You know, instead of talking about like how we need to have a black agenda, why don't you support a politician like me who has a black agenda? And if you want to see that black agenda, visit my website, again, ansonasaka.com. I will post a link in the description box. You can donate to this campaign. Again, if every subscriber donated $10 to this campaign, I would have more than enough money to be competitive in this race. And this money is dedicated to the campaign. It will not be used for any other purpose. It will be used to print flyers, to pay volunteers to distribute flyers. It will be used to buy posters, to create political ads, to run ads on radio and hopefully television or even social media. It will be used for all of those purposes, to hire staff if necessary. So, you know, I encourage you all to make a donation to this campaign. Again, you can visit ansonasaka.com to make a donation. Also, I want to let people know that if you are in Baltimore, you can meet up with me and we can canvass District 4 together in this campaign for peace and progress in this city, in this campaign to create a better Baltimore. You know, it's just a later for talking, man. Now's the time for action. Instead of just sitting back and fighting the power with words or by marching, it's time for us to seize power, and that's what I plan to do in this election. I'm fighting to make a difference in this city. You know, it's time for us to have politicians that are not afraid to speak truth to power. That's what we need. So, with that, you know, I'm going to say peace and blessings to y'all. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Peace.